The $100 million deal was about to collapse, until a janitor's 12-year-old daughter walked in and saved the deal while leaving the room speechless. EO panics without a French translator until the janitor's 12-year-old daughter shows up and saves $1 million deal. This can't be happening. Richard Donovan's voice thundered down the marble hallways of Donovan Industries. The 54-year-old CEO was visibly sweating through his $3,000 Armani suit as he paced frantically in his corner office on the 40th floor. In just 45 minutes, the French board from Groupe Marseilles would arrive for a landmark business negotiation. A $100 million contract for advanced medical technology was on the line, and the certified interpreter had just canceled due to a sudden family emergency. "Mr. Donovan, I've called every agency in town," said his assistant Jennifer, her voice quivering. "It's a national holiday. Nobody is working. The French reps insist, French only. No exceptions." Richard yanked off his tie, shoulders heavy with the pressure of 200 jobs. The family empire he'd built for 30 years was at risk. Rescheduling was impossible. The French had warned. It was now or never. "There must be someone, anyone, who speaks fluent French in this city," he barked, slamming his fist onto the desk. Then he heard a small, composed voice. "Dad, you left your wrench on the cart." Richard froze. Through the half-open door, he saw a young black girl, maybe 12, handing a tool to Joseph Williams, the janitor. She spoke flawless French, asking if he needed help with his work. "Jennifer," Richard whispered, eyes glued to her. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what, sir?" "That child." She spoke French. Jennifer looked puzzled. "That's Amelia, Joseph's daughter. She came to pick him up. School let out early." Richard observed the girl. Amelia Williams wore a standard school uniform, worn sneakers, and carried a backpack with frayed edges. She looked totally out of place in this polished world. Yet her calm gaze had a quiet intensity that halted Richard's spiraling thoughts. When she noticed him watching, she smiled and waved, with surprising confidence. "Joseph," Richard called, stepping out quickly. "Can I speak with you a second?" The janitor looked startled. "Is something wrong, sir?" "Your daughter, does she speak French?" Joseph blinked, nervously nodding. "Yes, sir. She's very gifted. Taught herself French at the library and online. She wants to study in Paris someday." Richard felt hope flare in his chest. "How fluent is she?" Joseph paused. "She volunteers at a museum. Speaks to French tourists all the time. They're always impressed." Amelia walked over, aware she was the topic. "Can I help you, Mr. Donovan?" she asked, her English polite, precise. Richard knelt down, trying to judge the risk. Could a 12-year-old really pull this off? He had no other options. "Amelia, I need someone fluent in French for a crucial meeting in 40 minutes. Would you be comfortable helping?" Amelia's eyes sparkled. "What kind of meeting, sir?" If this story of courage and unexpected talent moved you, hit subscribe to see how one girl rewrote the rules of corporate power and judgment. "A major business meeting," he repeated, eyeing her hopefully. "It's a live translation situation for a $100 million deal." Amelia's face grew serious. "I understand. I can do that." "Sir," Joseph interrupted gently. "With all respect, Amelia's just a kid. This might be too much." "Papa," she said in French, "let me show you." Then to Richard, "I learned French from my late grandmother. She only spoke French until I was 6. Richard's chest tightened. He too had lost a grandparent young. Still, doubt nagged. "Amelia, if you mess this up, the company could collapse." "But if it goes right," she replied, "you gain everything. Isn't trying with me better than not trying at all?" Jennifer rushed in. "Sir, the French confirmed. They'll be here in 35 minutes. Also, the Financial Times has reporters in the lobby." Richard ran a hand through his hair. 200 jobs, his family's legacy, and the media now in a child's hands. The irony struck him. He always said he was progressive. But was he really? "Amelia," he said, "do you realize how tough these men are?" "Yes. I read about Groupe Marseilles. They're demanding, but respect talent." "You did research?" He blinked. "Yes. Dad said an important meeting was today. So during lunch, I looked them up. Mr. Debossy lost his wife to a medical accident. That's why he funds innovation." Joseph gaped at his daughter. Even he didn't know she had looked into the execs. "Mr. Donovan," Jennifer whispered. "Update. They'll arrive in 20 minutes." Richard felt his stomach twist. 20 minutes to turn a child into a translator or face public failure. Anything else I should know? I also speak Spanish and German. I debate in French. I won 3 trophies this year. Debate? He asked, intrigued. What kind? Business ethics, innovation, social impact. She shrugged. My teacher says I explain hard ideas clearly. Richard stared. This wasn't a child playing pretend. She was trained, just never recognized. Joseph, he asked, why didn't you ever tell me? Joseph looked down. Sir, you've seen us every day. You never asked. That hurt. Richard realized he treated Joseph like background, efficient, invasive. Mr. Donovan, Amelia said quietly. You're hesitating because I'm young and black, aren't you? The question stunned him. No, it's not that. It's okay, she said kindly. I understand. But the good thing about being underestimated? You get to surprise people. As he wrestled with his bias, something shifted. Her confidence reminded him of his grandfather, who had built this company from nothing. 15 minutes, Jennifer announced. They're in the garage. Amelia stood beside her dad, unshaken. Richard noticed she didn't seem nervous. She looked ready. Amelia, he asked, did you get what this means? If you fail, people lose jobs. I do, she said firmly. But may I ask something? Why does my age matter more than my skills? Richard had no reply. Joseph shifted, proud but cautious. Sir, Jennifer said, stepping close. Can I talk to you privately? Jennifer, this is insane. She's just a kid. Sir, she said, cutting him off, a rare move. I grew up with them. Amelia's not like other kids. She got a full scholarship to Riverside Academy. She debates high schoolers and wins. Richard's eyes widened. That school costs $40,000 a year. There's more, Jennifer added. She also speaks Mandarin and Arabic. She teaches French to immigrants, volunteer work. 12 minutes, someone shouted. Richard looked at Amelia. Why didn't you ever tell me any of this? You never asked, she replied simply. Her voice echoed Joseph's earlier comment. He had ignored their brilliance for years. Amelia, he said, now serious. If you're doing this, I need to know you can handle the pressure. They test translators to break them. I know, she said calmly. I studied their tactics online. Mr. Dubosi asks about EU medical laws. Mr. Lauren uses idioms to confuse translators. Richard blinked again. You researched each executive? At lunch. I also read 3 years of annual reports and analyzed their tech briefings. Papa says preparation is respect. Joseph nodded. She never does anything halfway, sir. 10 minutes, echoed again. Jennifer handed over a folder. Executive summaries, in French. Just in case she needs them. May I? Amelia asked. Jennifer passed the documents. Amelia scanned them quickly. Page 3. Better to use Système d'Assistance Diagnostic. And on 5, the analytics term is outdated. Jennifer and Richard exchanged amazed looks. How do you know that? My grandmother was a nurse. She taught me medical French. She said the right word can save a life. 8 minutes. Richard made the call. Amelia, you're hired. But if they sense weakness, I understand, she said. But may I suggest, don't worry about me. Focus on how your tech saves lives. That speaks any language. As they walked to the conference room, Richard felt his anxiety lift. Amelia's calmness was infectious. Mr. Donovan, she said quietly, there's something you should know about this meeting. It could change everything. He paused. What? 5 minutes. Her eyes held a strange, calm fire. Mr. Dubosi lost a daughter in a medical accident 2 years ago. She was 12. Her name? Amélie, in French. Richard froze. How did you know that? I went beyond reports. I read obits. News. Interviews. Mr. Dubosi isn't just investing. He's trying to redeem a loss. Richard felt his worldview shift. Amelia wasn't a helper. She was the strategist they needed. The elevator dinged. Out stepped Mr. Philippe Dubosi, 62, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that cost more than Joseph's entire year's pay. At his side, Mr. Lauren Russo, younger but no less intimidating, carried an Italian leather briefcase and wore the expression of a man used to watching unprepared Americans falter. Richard drew a steadying breath and walked forward. Gentlemen, welcome to Donovan Industries. I am, good morning, Messrs. Dubosi and Russo. Amelia interjected gently in French, stepping ahead with the composure of a seasoned diplomat. I'm Amelie Williams, and I'll be your interpreter today. I trust your flight from Paris was pleasant and that you were able to rest despite the time difference." The stillness that followed was complete. The two French businessmen stood frozen, their guarded professionalism giving way to astonished disbelief. It wasn't only the girl's flawless command of their language, but the graceful formality of her greeting and the sincere warmth behind it. "Mon Dieu," Dubosi whispered in French, his eyes unexpectedly glistening. "Your accent, it's impeccable. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully?" Amelia gave a serene smile. "My grandmother was Haitian, sir. She raised me in French until I was 6. She always said French was the language of the heart." Richard watched, transfixed, as something remarkable unfolded. Dubosi slowly bent to one knee, so he was eye level with Amelia, his hands trembling just a little. "What is your name, child?" "Amelie, sir, like your daughter." Time seemed to stop. Dubosi closed his eyes, drawing in a long breath. When he looked up again, there was a gentleness Richard had never imagined he would see in such a powerful figure. "Mr. Donovan," Dubosi said at last, his English thick with feeling, "in 25 years of global business, I have never met an interpreter so young or so prepared. But there is something here that matters more than business." Rousseau, equally moved, added, "This child has shown us more respect and care in 2 minutes than many professionals display in entire negotiations." Richard felt his entire worldview splinter and reform in a single instant. For 40 minutes, as Amelia translated each technical detail with surgical precision, Richard witnessed a transformation he knew he would never forget. This was more than interpretation. Amelia conveyed the emotion behind the statements, the hidden worries, the unspoken aspirations. When Dubosi raised difficult questions about the ethics of artificial intelligence, she didn't just repeat them. She clarified, contextualized, and gave them a human dimension. "Mr. Dubosi is asking whether our technology can prevent the diagnostic mistakes that cost him his daughter." Amelia translated softly, her voice suffused with compassion. That was when Richard understood he was witnessing something deeper than a business discussion. A 12-year-old was guiding a moment of emotional healing in a way no adult in the room ever could. "Our technology," Richard said, locking eyes with Dubosi, "is designed so that no parent ever has to endure what you did." Amelia translated, but added her own words. "And I can assure you, sir, that every time this technology saves a life, your Amelie will live on through that act of love." Dubosi began to weep. A man who controlled $100 million was crying openly in a conference room because a child had found the words that even his costly therapists never had. "Mr. Donovan," Dubosi finally managed, wiping his face, "we're not going to invest merely the $100 million we discussed." Richard's pulse quickened. "We will invest $200 million, and we would like Amelie to be the official ambassador for this project." Rousseau nodded firmly. "This child grasps the purpose of medical technology more deeply than most executives ever do." Richard turned to Amelia, who sat calmly, as though securing the largest deal in company history were an everyday occurrence. "There is one condition," Dubosi continued. "We want to establish a full scholarship fund for Amelie, a university exchange in France. All expenses paid. This child must never be limited by her finances." Joseph, who had silently witnessed everything, finally spoke up. "Gentlemen, I don't even know what to say." "Papa," Amelia said softly in English, "remember how Mama always said God places special people in our lives at just the right moment? I think today we were all those people for each other." As the contracts were signed and champagne poured, Richard felt something dawning that would keep him awake for many nights. He had spent years passing Joseph and Amelia in the halls, treating them like part of the invisible backdrop of his company. He never dreamed he was overlooking the person who would rescue his business and redefine what it meant to truly see someone's talent. At the close of the meeting, as the French executives embraced Amelia in warm farewells, Dubosi leaned in to Richard and whispered, "Sir, you didn't just hire a translator today. You uncovered a treasure that had been right before your eyes." But the greatest revelation was still ahead. Because while everyone was celebrating this improbable triumph, something in Amelia's bright gaze suggested that this was only the beginning of an even larger story. One that would show the world the cost of judging people by appearances alone. 6 months later, The transformation at Donovan Industries was obvious the moment you entered. A portrait of Amelia Williams, now 13, smiled down from the lobby wall as the youngest corporate ambassador in American history, beside a gold plaque reading, "Innovation and Inclusion, recognizing talent where we least expect it." Richard stood at his window, watching Amelia lead a delegation of Japanese executives who were exploring expanding the project into Asia. Her newly discovered fluency in Japanese had impressed them so much they decided to double their investment. "It's surreal, isn't it?" Jennifer said, stepping up with the quarterly earnings reports. "The company has grown 400% since that day. Amelia's become a case study at Harvard, MIT, and Stanford." Richard nodded, still trying to absorb how a child had demolished decades of unconscious bias in a single afternoon. What began as desperation had turned into the most profound revolution in the company's history. "Mr. Donovan," Amelia's voice came through the intercom. "The Toyota executives would like to discuss implementation in Tokyo. Should I schedule it for tomorrow?" "Yes, Amelia, and thank you." Everything had changed. Joseph was no longer the invisible janitor. Richard had promoted him to operations supervisor, finally acknowledging that the man who raised such an extraordinary daughter had leadership abilities that had been overlooked for years. "My dad always said people only see what they expect to," Amelia explained during an interview on the nation's top morning show. "But when you stop judging by labels and start listening to hearts, you find incredible talent in the most unexpected places." That interview went viral, inspiring countless American companies to rethink how they identified and nurtured talent. Richard remembered the call from Dubosi just a week earlier. "Mr. Donovan, our hospital in Lyon has saved 120 children with your technology. Amelie taught us that investing in people is investing in miracles." Even more remarkable was how Amelia herself remained unchanged by her fame. Every evening, after fulfilling her duties as ambassador, she returned to her neighborhood, helped Joseph around the house, and continued teaching French to immigrants at the local church. "Money is just a tool," she explained to the Forbes reporter who wanted to know how a teenager managed a $2 million education fund. "If you don't use a tool to build something good, it's worthless." That interview had gone viral too, prompting hundreds of companies to overhaul their hiring practices. That afternoon, Richard received an unexpected visitor, Charles Hampton, CEO of Morrison Corporation, waiting anxiously in the lobby. Morrison had lost 3 big contracts to Donovan Industries recently, all negotiated by Amelia herself. "Richard," Hampton began, visibly uncomfortable, "I must admit I completely misjudged what you've built here. My company has lost out on talent for years because we only looked at resumes and appearances." Richard smiled, remembering how he had thought the same way just 6 months earlier. "Charles, what I've learned is that true talent is everywhere. We just have to look beyond where we've always looked." Hampton sighed. "I'd like to propose a partnership. We'd like Amelia's help reviewing our hiring and talent development. We're willing to pay whatever she asks." "I'll ask her," Richard said. "But knowing Amelia, she'll probably insist you invest in education programs for underserved communities." That's exactly what happened. Amelia agreed to consult. On one condition, Morrison Corporation would create a $5 million scholarship fund for kids from inner-city neighborhoods. "Everyone has an extraordinary story," she explained to Hampton at their first meeting. "The difference is who gets the chance to tell it, and who is willing to listen." 6 months after that life-changing day, as Richard watched Amelia explaining advanced AI concepts to executives from around the globe, he understood he'd learned the most important lesson of his career. Real success isn't about finding people who look like us. It's about recognizing greatness in the places we've never thought to look. Joseph appeared in the doorway in his new supervisor uniform. "Mr. Donovan, Amelia asked me to remind you about the meeting with the Chinese investors at 3. She's already reviewed all the technical materials in Mandarin." Richard laughed and shook his head. "Joseph, can I ask, how did you raise such an extraordinary daughter?" Joseph beamed. "Mr. Donovan, Amelia has always been this way. The only difference now is someone finally noticed." Watching Amelia lead yet another meeting that would bring in millions, Richard knew that desperate afternoon had done more than save the company. It had saved his own ability to truly see people. Best of all, Amelia was only just beginning. At 13, she was already planning her own corporate inclusion consulting firm, with a simple mission: to help companies discover the talent right in front of them, if only they would learn to look. If this story of hidden brilliance and second chances touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories about how success happens when we stop judging and start truly seeing the remarkable people beside us every day.